Good afternoon and welcome. I appreciate everybody's time and their interest. Welcome to today's webinar. It is about AI promises versus reality, how to prepare for digital transformation. I wanted to thank our sponsor, Premier NX. We'll talk a bit about them in a moment, and I'll introduce you to our guest expert with us today. I'm Ted Bernard. I'm delighted to have you with us. We have many participants that have already checked in, but we have a few that seem to be still coming in, so we'll give them a moment or two to log in. While we're doing that, just a few moments, a few housekeeping items as we get settled in. First, to mention that we are recording the session, and we will share the recording and slides afterwards. Give us some time to get that all set, and we will be happy to share that with everyone. Also note that as attendees, we have everybody on mute to ensure kind of a smooth, clean experience for everyone. But we do encourage an interactive discussion, and we will want to hear from you on thoughts and questions. So please use the Q&A box under typical layouts. You'll find that along the bar on the top of your screen. There'll be a Q&A icon. If you tap that, you'll be able to use that box to enter some questions and comments. Please share those with us. We'll address your questions, and whenever possible, if we have a number, we might kind of aggregate to related topics, and so that we can cover as many of your issues as possible during our discussion and during our time together today. We'll also run a couple of quick polls to get your feedback and your input during the webinar, so keep an eye out for those. So as people are kind of coming in, and let's get started and talk about our speakers. First, I want to introduce a friend, colleague, someone I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with, and who's got a great industry experience, Christa Heibel. She brings, I won't read the whole thing to her, you're welcome to read her, but she just brings some just incredibly deep and broad experience. She's worked with a number of companies at various sizes, throughout mid-market and enterprise level. She brings a tremendous experience and understands how the evolution of many industries have changed and how technology innovation really brings opportunity, but also brings challenges. So how to identify and how to work and overcome those challenges. And I'll let Christa in a moment kind of say hello and introduce herself. My name is Ted Bernard. I'm the managing principal of Invantage Group. It's a growth strategy consulting firm. We've worked with clients mostly in the early stage to mid-market and with a number of private equity-backed firms. I've had the pleasure of working on and helping to grow 2 firms to successful exits. I've worked with a number of firms to help them identify market opportunities, develop innovative solutions, a lot of technology, and how to scale effectively. So between the 2 of us, Christa and I have a lot of industry-related experience that we will bring to this, and we look forward to hearing your questions, thoughts, and insights throughout, and we'll address those as best as possible. So let me just take a moment to thank our sponsors who are behind the scenes, and while they're not here with us, we do want to give a shout out, a tip of the hat to Premier NX. They help mid-market companies to streamline a number of different areas, accounting, finance, back office operations through co-sourced expertise and technology-enabled solutions. They have these 5 fundamental solution pillars, as you can see, that they focus on CX, financial operations, sales enablement, analytics and insight, and digital transformations, which is a big area that we'll talk about today, though many of those will cut across each other. You can see they've got great set of partners. They've got a number of their own solutions that they've developed that are AI powered. They're excellent at helping to diagnose, and we'll give some examples throughout of how they use their PRIME framework for helping to project manage, to identify, to enable, and successfully scale these types of projects. So just want to give them thanks and appreciation for bringing a couple of experts together and bringing you together with us to discuss these questions and issues that many of us have. So let's briefly mention, I want to talk about one thing. This area of AI is an area that is clearly on everyone's mind. It's an absolute area that everyone's thinking about, not an if, but, or not a kind of if, but a when. And there's been a lot of rush to do things. And now you're seeing a lot of articles, a lot of research, a lot of studies of talking about a number of areas where those initial AI-driven pilots have been, well, whether they fail or just not as successful as desired or not delivering the types of ROI results. So this is a really timely issue to talk about that bridge between the hype and the reality and how to identify and overcome. And so there's a number of techniques and tools that we'll talk about today. So I just want to introduce Christa, who can share a few words and help us get started. Christa?
Sorry, do we want to do the first poll, Ted, or do you want to wait? You want to?
No, that's an excellent idea. That's an excellent idea. Why don't we get a poll to see how people are thinking and feeling about that? Let's start with just give us a sense of where you are today in terms of your AI adoption. And believe me, we've heard from people where it's everything from total confusion to exploring to fully implemented. So just share with us a quick sense of feedback as to where you are today and help us understand the kind of things that you're going to want to discuss.
Awesome. Yeah, we appreciate getting a little bit of an understanding of what kind of sits in the audience. So we see the results. I like how in real time you can see the results.
Well, it's great. It's not surprising, Christa, to see that it's kind of a breadth of responses from confused and not trying to be pejorative in any sense, but I think there is a lot of confusion at times. I think we all have the confusion. Some that are exploring and some that are clearly starting to pilot or scale some opportunities. So it's not surprising to see a nice breadth of responses. We appreciate that honest sharing and feedback. I think that helps to give us some context for today's discussion. So one of the things we want to do is talk about how to identify the challenges that we face and how to cut through the noise, if you will, to identify the areas that are best for starting your pilots and how to help them succeed and grow, Christa.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it's about a third piloting, not doing anything, or moving into more maybe optimization. So that hopefully, as Ted indicated, we're more than happy to let this be as interactive as you all would like it to be. And I think, hear feedback on some of our thoughts and ideas. So before we kick in here, where this slide actually, Ted doesn't even know this, but this slide actually was created when recently I gave a very similar talk in Columbus, Ohio, and somebody in the audience said to me, Christa, what is AI? And that somebody was Ted. And I don't even think he knows that I added this slide after that. But I think it is important to define for a minute what we are talking about today, because there is confusion in the market. There is a lot of things being labeled AI that I would argue are not necessarily true artificial intelligence. I feel like you walk into any contact center or CX conference today and every other booth is AI, all the way down the row. But, there is still other automation. There is still other efficiency gains in RPA and in other workflow automations, logic-based workflow automations. And what really is distinctive between those efficiency automation gains and AI is that AI is really learning and adapting on its own. But that's also the opportunity and the challenge of making sure that you have some foundational pieces in place as you move into the realm of playing around with this technology. So I do want to just say before we move any further, Ted is right. I've been doing this a really long time. I've been in contact centers. I am much more of an operations leader than a technician. I am the COO, not the CTO. So we are not going to get into how AI actually functions technically today. We're looking at AI from a business perspective. How do we deploy this tool and make it work within our organization? And the reason why we're having that conversation is just look at these numbers from a market and growth perspective. I believe it was in November of 2022 that ChatGPT came out. By March of 2023, we do a lot of work in the private equity space, and we were seeing communication going out amongst the private equity community around the investment in AI moving into 2023 with hopes of severe business operating cost savings. I felt at the time that that was a little premature for where the technology was merely 4 or 5 months from ChatGPT release, but you can see here how the market responded. 107% growth.
Wow.
From 2022 to 2023, another 63% growth the following year. But I also want you to note, for the purpose of this conversation, how that growth rate has slowed down. This is not uncommon. For any of you listening today that have been around emerging tech, there's always kind of that early adopter phase where organizations are jumping into this aggressively with curiosity and obviously the funds to do that. And then there's usually a little bit of a cooling off period where we kind of get our arms around what is the technology really capable of and what are some of the best use cases and applications. And I think that's one of the things Ted alluded to in his introduction is we're kind of in that phase right now of pause and research and reevaluation so that we can all, from a market and an industry perspective, move forward together a little bit smarter.
Christa,
so if you look, yep.
Christa, if I may, let me share like a quick vignette of like a case example, because I think it's a perfect fit for there. When I was talking about a lot of companies, to your point before, that there's confusion. They look at graphs like you were showing a moment ago. They're seeing the skyrocketing of stuff. They've got their issues, and they're saying, well, how do I've got to figure out a way to use this. I had a client, and this is one of the ways that I became really acquainted with Premier in the recent years, is a client that really had a challenge. I mean, they're a very large equipment rental network. They have a diverse client base. They have global footprint, numerous different channels. And Premier did a fantastic job of understanding and working with them, of figuring out what's the challenges. They use this prime implementation framework that they've developed that really does a great job of understanding the critical challenges. And they really did a fantastic job of bringing together tools that help to improve analytics based on kind of a lot of unstructured data, a lot of different multiple channels to kind of bring those disjointed communications together. They identified the root causes, they brought in analytics tools, AI-powered analytics tools, and they implemented a platform across the business that did a great job of that. And that's one great example where they were able to achieve a nearly 2x return for the client by helping them to understand where AI can be useful and where they're not yet ready for it. A lot of it was analytics, communications, unification, and helping to support their support teams with information and reducing a lot of rework. So that's I think a great example from my experience of working with Premier of where and how to identify AI-powered tools, exactly to your point, overcoming the confusion, seeing the things, and developing and implementing the right tools. So I just want to share that as a real-life example.
That's great. And I'll share some additional kind of client case study information as we get into a little bit more of what we're defining as AI readiness. I think now that we're moving into the phase of more broad deployments, since there have been a number of initial use cases and POCs being completed, again, we see kind of a leveling off of that spend. And part of that is because if you look at the alluring promises of AI, if you look at what those private equity investors and groups were really talking about when you look at AI in a business, you see some really tantalizing things as promises, right? Customer delight, improvement in overall positive interactions, cost efficiencies, decreasing in cost per transactions, more self-service. I don't know if we can move on to the next slide here as I'm listing these. Employee retention and employee engagement tools, and then also like really accelerating learning curve, training, agent assist tools. So there's a whole lot of research and a whole lot of information out there that looks at some of these different use cases that Ted is indicating that organizations really need to kind of evaluate and figure out on their journey where to even begin. And it's really overwhelming when you get told all of those promises, right? And who doesn't want to see all of these things happen from a solid technology investment, right? And unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of times these investments are allocated directly to just cost savings, but there often are other benefits as well, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So that's the alluring promises, but what has been the reality? Again, like any real emerging technology, the AI is promised to be a game changer in all of these ways. But the reality has been, as Ted and I have both been indicating, that there's actually a lot of early stage learning, some overhyped maybe on the ROI side of all of this, some other limited use cases being deployed just because of maybe a lack of cohesive strategy and things happening internally. And let us not also forget that even in the last few years, as the market is spending and investing in this technology, it's also evolving very, very quickly. So there are tools today around like language neutralization AI applications that 3 years ago weren't even really on the radar, that are things that in the next 2 years are really flagged to become pretty big game changers within the CX contact center specific space. So lots of things working. Please know that what we are not saying is that those promises aren't possible. We know they are. I have clients that have, for example, seen up to a 50 to 60% headcount decrease within their customer service and CX area. But that didn't happen plugging one AI tool in 30 days later. That was a 2 to 3 year technology roadmap that got them there with very specific AI use cases that made sense for their business. So the promises exist, it's in the path. And what we learned when we looked at this is we started researching the derailers. If these are the alluring promises, but these are the results people are seeing, they're not getting the call deflection they're looking for. They're not getting the headcount modifications they're looking for. They're not seeing the cost per transactions decreasing like they want. What was the problem? And so we kind of came up with, in our research, a top list of AI derailers, we call them, right? What is stopping organizations from success in these investments? What is stopping organizations from meeting those alluring business investment promises? And really what we did is we took these list of items: unrealistic ROI and planning, poor quality data, lack of organized or even existing knowledge management, integration challenges, operational gaps between workforce and the business side and the tech side, kind of a set it and forget it mindset where they just kind of plugged it in and said, well, we got AI, but without really understanding the optimization phase needed for the technology itself. and we kind of reversed the derailers and came up with, what does AI maturity look like? If these items are some of the biggest hurdles, then what would it look like if an organization was really ready for AI? How do we avoid those challenges? And how do we know internally that we have the right foundation in place to make those investments as valuable as possible?
Krista,
And
this
so,
is a great point. Krista, if I may, my apologies for interrupting you. This is a great point because I'm taking a look at the number of questions. We're getting a bunch of questions here. And I think that some of them are really relevant to exactly the point you're making in terms of the derailers and how do we identify, when we're ready in the maturity stages. First, I just want to comment to one. Someone asked about the particular platform of an example that I mentioned. And while I'm happy to share, but since I am not really, it's confidential information, so I'm sorry that I can't share the platform in particular, but I'm sure that we could have maybe a follow-up conversation of the types of things that were involved in that. But I think a key element in that example, and maybe in some of the derailers you're talking about, is when people try to take on too much, they try to digest too much of a project at once. So maybe let's do a poll now and ask people about their organization's, or what they believe are their organization's biggest barriers to AI adoption. So we've heard clearly from a number of people, whether it's data or the quality of data to developing a business case, budget issues. So let's get some feedback from the people, because I'm seeing a couple questions that are asking these exact things. How do we know? What are the issues that people have overcome? And I know from the example I gave a moment ago, it was trying to take on too much too quickly, and where the kind of prime framework by Premier helped them to control and focus it. So give us some feedback.
For some reason, Ted, I don't see the poll, so I'm on bated breath. You'll have to share
No
with
worries,
me.
it's coming in now. Right now, the leading response is talent or skills gap. But there are other numbers. Again, not surprisingly, there's a number of different responses. Please share, give us a quick polling feedback to help us know where you're at and what more you want to hear from Krista, and some examples that we can share that will help to know where the challenges are and where the maturity can and should look like to know where to start. Based on a number of responses, clearly the leading one still right now is talent skills gap. That is by far the biggest one. There's a kind of an even spread across quality of data, ROI of the business case, change management budget. They each have some people saying that they're experiencing that, but by far, 2.5 times more than the others is talent skills gap. So hopefully that'll help you as we talk about some of these readiness issues.
We're going to talk about that. I also see that there's a question about how else to measure success and where have companies seen early success. So I just want to footnote that, and I'll come back and answer those questions here shortly. So
thank you.
Good. Okay. So AI maturity, we have basically at CH Consulting Group defined, again, against those market derailers, some baseline fundamental items that we can assist our clients on, or you can take these back internally within your organization, whether you're beginning your AI journey and in the first poll you were one of the people still trying to figure this out in a state of confusion and being overwhelmed, which, trust me, we all are at some level with this, or if you're moving into pilots or you're moving into full rollout, if you're running into any challenges, these areas may be of value to you internally to pause and take a moment on. And again, I think we'll come back to those other questions here shortly. So first and foremost is the ROI-driven AI roadmap. From the moment that I saw the email correspondence and communication within the private equity world, promises of headcount decreasing and cost cutting with just deploying AI. Again, what kind of application are we even talking about? I have been nervous about what I feel like we really saw within the market, within our own client base, mid-tier and enterprise, is often the C-suite, the boardroom, were mandating down budgets to IT saying, go get AI. And IT went and got AI. We had clients all over the place. They're plugging in self-service tools. They're plugging in speech analytics. They're putting AI in, but they were not doing it in conjunction with business overall strategy, with the operations side of the house. So rule number one, when it comes to AI maturity and readiness, is have a business plan and strategy. What is the problem you are looking to solve for with the AI? It's not enough to just say, go get AI. Go get AI to what? What problem, what improvement in CX, what improvement operationally from an employee engagement, a customer experience, a cost savings, a revenue improving? What is the goal? What's the objective? How are you going to measure it? How are we defining success? How long is it going to take? What is the budget? There just overwhelmingly was a lack of cohesive strategy. And I'll tell you, in most of our most successful AI deployments, if you come back to our clients and ask them, again, I'm specifically speaking right now to CX related technology integrated in and around that customer journey and the contact center, sales, service, support, back office part of your organization. If you ask teams that have successfully deployed this, what is the lift between IT versus operations on making this technology successful within your organization? They will tell you that it is generally the ops side of the house, and the input from them carries even more weight in successful deployment than just the back end IT resources. So it's very important that the business unit is in sync. The second area is data. If we are not making our AI strategy based on some validated data and data set and with measurable KPI improvement, we would question our client, then why are you doing it? Generally, we're making investments into new technology to move a needle. I know one of the questions is, what is that? What if it's not just saving money? Well, there are other KPIs that we measure CX and contact center operations success with: employee retention, quality, accuracy, compliance. There's a number of other areas that we can look at in order, but we should be defining how we're measuring that. And more importantly, on the back end, we should know that we have access to the data that is accurately going to help us measure whether or not we are being successful. I know that most of you are probably thinking you have this area covered. I will tell you, in the 15 years that I've been consulting, 80% of my clients are not looking at the right data, either because they don't have access through the system and technology to see it, which we'll talk about again in another minute, or there's integrity issues, or they don't even know where their gaps are. So data is a really important part of success when it comes to any technology and operational improvement.
Christa, I'm gonna, just, I don't know, instead of piling on, but I'm definitely going to reiterate exactly that point. I think the first two things that you mentioned were, having a roadmap, having a real understanding of what can be accomplished, the ROI roadmap, understanding what is it you're trying to solve. And I think it goes back to a point we were both making earlier of not trying to do too much at once. But also this was like what I think maybe the second highest in the poll was about, data. The first highest being, the skills issue and data. And those can be related items. There is a lot of data. I mean, we've been in a digital world now for a number of years. So there's a lot of data out there. So it's not a matter of, is there data quantity? The question is there quality? Do we have our hands around it? Can we analyze it? And there's a lot of tools that I think that might have been once thought of as next gen or future gen tools that are realities today that are being driven by AI. I know that the Premier Nexus tool is a great example, and I'm sure there are other quality ones out there that do a great job of in real time taking unstructured data and helping to analyze and organize and categorize so that we can help separate the wheat from the chaff, if so to speak, so that we can help determine, to your point, what's good data that we need to be thinking about versus what is maybe outlier or extraneous data that just is confusing us. And that's the kind of that concept of the signal from the noise. How do you separate so that we know where to focus and what's actionable insights and what do the analytics tell us? So there are some really good tools like Premier and Nexus and others out there that help to do that. And I think those are related concepts of the skills gap. How do we do it? And there are tools as well as the quality data question. What is quality? How do we use it? How do I identify so that we're not constantly confused or going off in different directions to help us focus?
Yeah. Yeah, it's alarming, Ted, how often I see data manipulation within organizations, conscious or unconscious changes in calculations of KPIs and information. And if you don't have good governance over like true source of data, information, and validation, you might be making business decisions on inappropriate facts. And that is definitely something we want to help our clients avoid. And again, is unfortunately a wider problem than I think people realize. And this really ties really nicely. I really could rearrange these slides, honestly, into the integration of the existing systems, right? Data is coming out of technology, and technology needs to have either integration in place so that all of this data is flowing. We learned during all of the, next slide, please. We learned during all of the CX research and how we define customer experience and the customer journey and omni-channel with the development of cloud and CCaaS in the last 10 years, that the consumer wants to communicate with you through the channel they want to communicate with you through when they want to do it, and they do not want to have to repeat their problems. So if you deploy a poorly deployed web chat bot that does not allow me to solve my problem, and I have to get over to the voice channel and I have to start all over again with what I've already been trying to address in your chat channel and with your chat bot, I'm not a happy customer. So again, in going back to the question I think Michelle posted around how do we measure success from a KPI perspective beyond just cost reduction, containment into some of these self-service tools would be another KPI, and making sure that your CSAT or any other CX measurement is not moving in the wrong direction while you're deploying this technology. And some of that has to do with the integration of all of this. And so there's a lot to be decided by the technology resources within your organization in conjunction with business operational leaders around business needs and requirements to determine the right technology tool set to use and deploy. And it's hard today to get everything fully integrated. It's hard today to be fully omni. The reality is we've been talking about omni-channel for over 10 years, but very few of our clients are fully integrated across all systems, platforms, and data and reporting when it comes to SMS, email, web chat, and voice still today. Some of that is because if you look at the statistics of what is still on-prem, it's shocking. I think it's just between 25 and 30% of enterprise is still on-prem. So all of these tools, CCaaS tools, now AI tools, are all in this fast evolution of development, and it's a rat race on the feature development side. And sometimes this tool you have in place isn't giving you what you need, so you need this tool, but there's really got to, again, be a business strategy and plan for how you're going to make that work all together. And that buy, build, or partner topic is an important one. So Christa, really understanding your business needs to make that decision is important.
Christa, I mean, that's really neat. I love the way that you kind of made those couple of issues connected, because when you talk about data quality, and then here we talk about integration, I go, that is got to be a big gap. I know personally, I've worked with companies that that go to, bigger platform or AI enablement, but they miss some of the data sources. Again, but I've certainly got a client experience, in the e-commerce world that they can't, integrate their CRM, their customer databases, or frankly, even their finance and accounting, to kind of how to bring it all together with the various feedback loops. So you can't digest it, you can't do it all at once, but the goal is to start to figure out how to integrate and how to get all those tools together. So tools that can help take various, whether it's structured and unstructured data, to bring it together piece by piece and recognize that it doesn't happen in a weekend, right? There has to be, to your point, a business plan, and the talent or partners to kind of help bring those tools together so that you can have a more holistic knowledge base. That's clearly been a big challenge. I know that I've worked with a couple of clients, and it sounds like you have too, where that is a challenge of not having that data integrated and missing valuable insights, or maybe getting lost or off, on the wrong road because they don't have a full picture.
And think about it, Ted. We're talking about in 2023, $196 billion was the global AI market. Wow. The money being spent on this technology, and what percentage of organizations have a CX/AI IT tech strategy in place? I'm not, if the tech is evolving, the strategy is also going to evolve. But we walk into organizations and listen, it is a rat race to keep up with. Look at the CCaaS market now embedding AI functions from workforce management and IVR and agent assist and everything into those platforms. Some of them are really great. Some of them are not so great. Some of them may not meet expectations. And again, you're third party integrating in a requirement that you need. But long term, the goal has to continue to be to collapse and consolidate wherever possible because of the impact it has on the resource labor side and all that. So it's
let's talk about some of the knowledge management. Let's talk about those knowledge management tools, ways to kind of bring that together.
Yeah, well, so the next area of AI readiness that we identified again throughout those hurdles is the knowledge management piece. It's just funny to me. I'm 35 years in and around contact centers, sales, service, support, and business strategy. And it is still shocking to me how often we walk into organizations, multi-billion-dollar companies with 3-ring binders and Post-it notes sitting around the agent's desktop. So this is a problem for automation. If organizations, I would say statistically, this looks the same to us as data. Probably about 20 to 25% of our clients have the right and full data set they're working off of. Probably 20 to 25% of our clients are managing their KMS correctly or even have a KMS system. So that means the other 70 to 75% either do not have documented SOPs, training material, and workflows, or they're documented, but there's no governance for updating and maintaining them. And I think this is a really important factor because what you feed AI is going to dictate the quality of what that tool is going to be able to do for you. So knowledge management, even before you get into, we're very big on ROI as it relates to technology investment. So even before you get to putting AI in place, there can be ROI in just deploying a solid KMS tool that agents have direct access to. And then obviously that becomes a very important part of future deployment of things like agent assist tools or any type of chat or voice bot. So knowledge management and how that fits within the tech stack is really critical. And last but not least, as we look at those 5 areas, is really the operational excellence or workforce readiness side of this. Whenever I get to this slide, the word that always comes to mind is fear. There's a lot of fear in the workplace today about AI. There's a lot of fear within our clients, within the contact center about this topic. People are worried about their jobs legitimately. And so we can get really excited about this technology and what it can do. But I think the question that was asked in the Q&A section around what else measures success beyond just cost reduction is really important, because that is ultimately a big part of what AI is bringing to the table for businesses. But to get there, you really need the people in the business to help make that successful. Most of these tools need some sort of human in the loop feedback in order to validate the accuracy. So things like agent assist tools that allow your frontline staff to have something making them more efficient. Agent assist tools can decrease training time. They can increase the amount of cues or skills or work that an agent is able to do by helping an agent through those workflows. But the agent is also scoring in those initial early phases of an agent assist tool the validity and accuracy of what AI is feeding them, which becomes then a good baseline for, again, how you might do more external self-service AI bot type applications. So we absolutely say you have to embrace a partnership between IT and ops in the strategy and the defining of the success of the AI deployment. But you also want to be partnering with the operations side of the house in the human feedback loop part and in helping continue to grow the success of your AI initiatives. It may ultimately be that headcount is going to decrease, but the other thing that I think a lot of people misunderstood, and maybe this goes a little bit to the skills gap or human side of experience around this, we still need people helping manage, run, and validate and using the AI tools. So where some jobs may be going down, other positions are being created. It's not just a headcount cut that really long-term makes all of these initiatives successful. And then the last but not least, because again, there's no priority to the order of these items around maturity in your organization for AI, is really this idea of co-sourcing. We laugh a little bit well, I laugh internally because Ted, my CTO, sometimes laughs that I'm talking about AI. And this is why I started the presentation by saying I'm not a CTO, I'm not a technician, I'm a business strategist, business leader, entrepreneur, operations leader. And so I understand that in today's world, who is the expert on all of this? And so organizations are being asked to come in and navigate this from a zero experience level. So we are really big promoters of co-sourcing for AI success, whether it's help on your strategy, it's help on your build out, it's help on making sure you're getting the right applications or use case with the highest bang for your buck, whether it's the integration challenges that your organization is facing. There are organizations out there like yours, like mine, like Premier NX, that have resources available, have had the opportunity in the last 3 years now to help the market move the needle forward on all of these opportunities and all of these challenges. And I think it would really behoove organizations when they sit down and they look at these AI maturity areas and say, where are we really at? Like, how do we really feel about our tech stack, gap assessment strategy, and long-term visioning? How are we really doing on data? And really not be afraid to bring organizations in that can supplement and complement your organization in order to make sure that these investments are successful.
Christa, let me bring in a couple. I'm seeing a number of related questions and comments in a few areas. And one area is definitely about data. And how do one person even described as saying their data is a mess and spread across different systems, which is very common. So apologies if I had, gave a trigger, to somebody. But we have several questions or comments. And one piece of feedback I would give is you don't need to be perfect. It's that old line of don't let perfect get in the way, of good, of improvement, of better. So we can start with pilots. And I think it goes to your point of several points about knowledge base, talent, data, and co-sourcing. This was a case where, and the reason that I became familiar with the Premier Nexus tool is because of a client that we're working with that needed that kind of had this data silos. And what they were a logistics company. They are processing their thousands of routings and invoices and tools, and how to bring it all together. So how to bring all that disparate and sometimes even manual workload distributions, how to bring it together. The process, the tools that we went through with Premier NX's help was to develop, to institute, implement some tools that brought some clarity to it, that started to bring in and integrate the data from those different sources, that achieved a 50%, I think it was about a 52.7%, to be exact, reduction in processing time. So it was a really valuable, and it reduced processing time, eliminating errors, a lot of elimination of cost reduction and reruns and rework. So there are tools available. And I think to your point of don't just buy it off the shelf or try to, do it yourself. There are some really good resources out there to partner with to help take those tools, great tools that are already developed out there, how to understand and implement them in the right way, in a tailored way to your specific way. So I'm seeing a lot of questions about how to start to do that. And I think your comments about co-sourcing and partnering are very relevant to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Data integrity, very, very critical element. Are there any other questions, Ted, that we want to address at this point?
Yeah, someone wanted to get back to, they saw the comment in some of the initial, like the marketing materials, the postings about the 95% failure rate example, and some of the most important reasons. And I think it goes to some of the things that we've been talking about and that you've really emphasized. And in that particular case example, it was truly a misalignment with business goals. They had projects were chosen that were kind of interesting, or maybe they thought were, easy or low-hanging fruit, versus solving real core pain points. I think we've seen that certainly in a number of case studies. I think we've certainly seen it in some research and talking to other peers in the industry, this kind of picking things that sound interesting versus really understanding, back to your point about the business case, what are the biggest problems, what are our priorities, and what are we trying to solve. The other element I think that we've often seen common as a reason why so many, at least initial pilots and programs fail, or at least fail to meet the ROI expectations, is due to change management gaps. Some of it goes back to skills gap that was identified earlier. Some of it is about adoption and training. So it's bringing people along. It's overcoming that fear that you mentioned, right? It's keeping the human in the loop as a part of it. These tools can help our teams to be more successful, not necessarily replace them. It makes the human capital more valuable by bringing in the human intuition and giving them tools that will help them to be even more successful. I think that's where we've seen success versus companies that are looking to just eliminate labor, are the ones that are saying, no, how do we bring it to a higher level?
Yeah, I think that goes into the next slide a little bit around some of the consequences of not doing this, right? Like all of the same big players that are running around citing all the alluring promises in the slides earlier are now also initiating McKinsey, Forrester's, the warnings of not doing it right. And I think, listen, if operations is not at the table with IT on your AI strategy, if you don't have an AI strategy, that's a flag. If you don't have if that strategy does not have both an IT and a business requirements element to it, you're already at a disadvantage. I can't express enough how many times we've walked in and a budget's given to the tech side of the house, and they're doing what they're being asked to do. They're going out, they're exploring, they're finding cool tools, they're playing around with it. But if it's not tied back to operations, it is just not going to have the optimization impact that your organization is inevitably looking for. So pausing around all of these things is really important. And I think if you do that, then you're going to realize those AI promises, right? You're going to find success in your cost per transaction, your employee engagement, your employee retention, your CSAT and other CX measurements and scores, right? So again, it's not that those things are not achievable. It's just that we have to do it the right way. I have a really good friend of mine in this industry. He's been around, Ted, as long as you and I have been doing this. And he's not a very technical guy. And he's like, Christa, tell me, am I wrong? I just look at this and think, it's still a business. It's still a business doing business. So the AI just has to support the business, right? And as simple at some level as that sounds, that's not, again, what we're finding is the case often as organizations are trying to deploy this. I do want to also just address one last question that I saw, like, what are some of the places people are seeing success? And I do want to just kind of add this point to the end here. We philosophically believe in internal again, I'm talking specific to CX, sales, service, support function of your organization. We generally believe in internal facing applications before external. And what I mean by that is speech analytics, right? Tools that are enhancing your workforce management, AI-enabled training, LMS, employee engagement, agent assist tools. Those are all speech analytics, number one. Those are all tools that are going to create operational efficiencies, but again, because they're being used by operations, you automatically have that human in the loop on validation and optimization of the tech, and you're going to pick up some real wins from an efficiency perspective with that. Speech analytics is going to give you data and help you roadmap out your strategy moving forward. Then we generally say move to more of the self-service external when you feel like you have the right data, you know your knowledge management is good, you have a little bit more experience, then maybe start playing with some of those chat bots and voice bots and things that are facing the customer. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned on that where do we see success? We see success across all of those. Again, it's just a matter of where you start, and we say internal first.
Great. Let me also, that's a great one to get to, and thanks for noticing that question. And there's another question, or a couple of questions related to the co-sourcing a partner model that that you referenced, a slide back or two ago. Asking about what's the day-to-day like? How does it look? What kind of, how should we think about and get a good partner? And so here's the advice that I would say from my experience of working in a number of examples, and Christa, please, you can chime in as well, is don't think of it either way. I don't want to think of it just purely as them taking over. And don't let it be just academic, like, oh, here's like an academic paper of how you should do it. It's got to be an advisory. It's got to be a partnership. It's got to be a side-by-side where it will work best. So ultimately, you, the client, you own the business context. You own the adoption. You have to help define what's the importance, whereas the partner firm can help you with the skills, their concept definitions, the key metric developments, the technical build and integration. But you, the company, have to really know what your pain points are so that you can work together and collaborate. So it's not going to be just purely at the one end and, kind of academic advice, and you're not, giving in and giving it over the keys to somebody else to do it. It's got to be a better collaboration, and that's where I've seen it be successful.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to our last point here to ask a poll, as we wrap this up and keep everybody on time. So if we could just put our last poll up, and we're asking you what you think what are your areas of highest priority? Let's just say in the near term, the next 12 months, what are your highest priorities for some kind of AI powered tools or needs that you believe that your organization needs to address? So just give us some quick feedback, and we'll make sure that we're addressing your questions, or we can do any follow-ups if needed. So we've still got a few coming in.
I'd like to see the predictive analytics decision support item there, because again, if you're using some of the speech analytics, sentiment analysis, that is giving you more data. We would argue that will help you as you navigate a lot of the other potential applications in your organization.
Not surprisingly, it seems like a number are focused on that cost efficiency, because I think that's the first area that a lot of companies look for, is like, how do we become more cost effective? Because dollar saves, dollar earned, although it's hard to scale on cost efficiency, but it's certainly a critical element. But it's also nice to see, and not surprising, kind of the predictive analytics. I think that's a big area and a growing area that I've seen in the marketplace. Back to that point of, we've got all this data, how do we make sense of it? How do we turn it into actionable? How do we, make it, usable? So I think that's a big area of benefit.
I do want to comment on the cost efficiency piece again. That does not require you to go automatically to a bot, okay? Because you're going to get some of that cost efficiency if you take the right steps along the way. We have seen ROI on just knowledge management deployment. Then there's the agent assist tool. So again, there's any type of agent training. We've seen costs cut by 50% on just cross-training agents from one skill to another with the right type of AI tools. So that is a real part of the reality of AI. Again, it's not the only benefit. It's clearly a very important one to the market, but there's still the right way to kind of step into that.
Excellent. Well, I do want to keep my eye on the time. I do want to be honest and fair with all of our participants. We've got, lots of people that have joined us today. We've gotten lots of really good questions. I appreciate everybody's feedback, whether it's in questions, comments, the polls. A big thank you to Premier NX for sponsoring today's discussion and helping to bring some clarity to this AI implementation and challenges, along with some great ideas on how to help implement successfully and how to scale. I think these are great questions. Christa, I love the kind of real world examples and what you've learned from those years of experience, and I share with you. I think we're really aligned on many of those in terms of the types of things, and not unsurprisingly, the types of things and the challenges that we've experienced and the challenges that we've seen clients experience. So I would encourage you, feel free. I hope that we've addressed at least all of the questions or question areas, but you can see contact information for each of us, or I would encourage you to use that QR code to check out Premier NX, learn about their areas. They have a real breadth of services that goes across not just CX, but other areas of financial operations support, analytics, which was one of the big areas, and talent solutions. So I think that I would encourage people to check them out as they look at a number of other really good providers in the industry. I thank everybody for their time and input and questions. This is clearly an area of great interest and yet great challenge. So it makes it for, some real interesting stuff. And of course, Chris, I thank you for your time and expertise. It's always a pleasure working with you.
Thank you, Ted. It was good to have this chat. I appreciate always being able to get out and talk to people about it. We know that it's a real high business priority right now, whether you're ready or you want to or not, you have to be dealing with AI. So all of us are here to assist you. I believe through that QR code, there's also access to our white paper on AI. So yeah, thank you, Premier, for letting Ted and I come in and chat about this ever important topic.
Great. Thank you to all. Thank you, Christa, again. Thank you to Premier NX. Goodbye.
Thank you.